Are you looking to master the newest Valorant agent, Vyse? You've come to the perfect place to learn everything about the latest Sentinel in the agent lineup. In this video, I will explain each piece of a utility in great detail, including interactions with other agents. I will also walk you through the logic behind creating defensive setups and how to approach attacking with her. And if you stick around until the end of the video, I'll share some secret strategies for Bind. Today's episode is sponsored by Elgato. Go to elgato.com for the newest hardware for streamers, use the link from the description below and the code for 5% off. Thank you Elgato for sponsoring the stream. Let's start with the first piece of utility called Shear. It's the wall that you have only one in your equipment. It costs 200 credits and once you place it, you cannot pick it up, but it's also indestructible. So how does it work? We use it on a wall anywhere on the map, and then it has 12 meters range of that wall once it's being built up. But when we place it, as you can see here, this is the length of the wall once it's placed, and it's like transparent because it's invisible to the opponents. But when you're placing it, it becomes invisible after a few seconds. So pay attention right now to how it's gonna spawn.
Placing wall trap.
It's visible to the opponents, and now it becomes invisible. Also, when you place it, you have a projection of the actual wall, as you can see here. This is the actual representation of how big the wall is gonna be once it's being built, and also the height of it. So all of this is accurate, and the height is exactly the same as Sage Wall, but it's not as thick as a Sage Wall, and it's one segment. So once it's being triggered by an opponent, it's gonna look like this. It's visible to the opponents, it's invisible. Now it's active to be triggered. Opponent goes through it. I'm gonna flip in a moment.
Wall trip.
Here we go. And that's gonna be edited in post. So now you can see how the wall looks like. It's indestructible, it cannot be shot through, and it lasts 8 seconds.
Wall trip.
You cannot go through it, you have to go around it or jump over it. Now the thing is though, that the wall gets activated in very specific moments. So when a player goes through it, it doesn't get activated till the bigger half, or like more than 50% of the character goes through this line. So you can literally stand on this line as an opponent and not activate the wall. But once you cross it by 50%, by more than 50% of your body, like this, then it gets activated and the wall is building up. The thing with the wall though, when it's being built, it pushes you away, so you're not going to be able to stand on it. I'll represent it right here like this. It's gonna pop, and I'm being moved by the wall. I cannot stand on it when it's being built, but I can jump on it after it's being built. So that's, you can use that for some setups as well. The wall is only being triggered right now in the game by real players. And you can also will be able to trigger it in the future with a Yoru clone, but right now it's bugged, but it's confirmed with the devs that it is a bug and it's gonna be fixed in the future. From all the other interactions, Wingman is not triggering the wall, Skydog is not triggering the wall, Sova Drone is not triggering the wall, Yoru in his ult, it's not triggering the wall, and I'm assuming that's not a bug because he is not material, and it's not the sound that triggers the wall, it's the actual player model that triggers the wall to exist in the game. Now, the entire idea on how to use this wall is to primarily on defense make sure that you can isolate one of the players that is going through with the execute from the rest of the team, so you can get into a 1v1 gunfight between the player that is already on site and the other players that are still in the choke point. On attack though, you can use this as a trap because you can place it similarly to a Cypher trap and it gets triggered when someone goes through it. The upside of it is that it cannot be destroyed by any shock darts, by any kind of pieces of utility. So someone has to actually trigger it, so you will know, you get notified when the wall goes up. But the problem is that you only have one. The very important information is when will the opponent see the wall? And that is 4 meters. So once your opponent goes in range of 4 meters, like this, they're gonna start seeing the wall. It's gonna be looking exactly like this, but in a red tint, and there's gonna be a droning sound around it. So they will be alerted within 4 meters. Now let's talk about the traps, or I don't know, grenades, whatever you call them. They're called actually Razorvine in the game. They have 150 credits each. You can have up to 2, and there are multiple ways in which you can use them. In general, the agent is incredibly flexible, so you're gonna have a lot of freedom of choice. Now, when you use it, it's gonna look like this. You're gonna throw it like a grenade. It lands on the ground. It cannot land on a wall. It doesn't stick to it because it bounces. And then you activate it, and it creates an area of effect that deals damage when someone is moving through it, and only when someone is moving through it. It also slows down the enemies. Each time someone makes a step through it and you get the audio cue for it, it deals 6 damage. But also very important is to note that it lasts 10 seconds, so it's very, very long. The problem is, it doesn't deal damage if someone is just standing in it. If I'm just standing in the range of it, it does deal damage. I can also jump up in it and not deal damage to myself. But if I bunny hop through it, I will get damaged. Another important thing to understand about this utility piece is that it has incredible range.
Launching thorns.
You can use cross-map lineups from, for example, on Ascent on A to help on B, and vice versa. So it's very flexible with how you can help it. It can be used as a trap after you isolate someone with the wall.
Wall set.
So like this, when someone goes through the wall, you activate it, and now the player is kind of stuck in this position. So when you want to think about this utility piece, about the Razorvine, you have to imagine that this is a Sage Slow with a radius of a mosh pit from Gecko, and it will only deal damage when someone moves from it. So the goal of this molly, kind of molly, but it's another molly, is to make sure that either opponent stays in that place to fight against you, or he's not gonna swing from a corner that you might be worried about. So there are different applications of this utility piece on both attack and defense, and we're gonna go in depth about that in the later stages of this video. During recording of this video, I also learned that there's a small interaction that kinda ruins Thorns to be effective, because you're able to AD spam like this and not get damaged. So that's kind of sad and kind of ruins the intent behind Thorns to mitigate people from moving, or at least when they move to punish them for moving. I will update you in the comments if this is a bug or it's actually intended mechanic. One more important thing about the Razorvine is that when it's being placed, your opponent will see it. So it doesn't become stealth at one moment it lands. So pay attention how it looks. The visuals will always tell you things.
Rip and tear.
See how it becomes invisible after a while?
Rip and tear.
This is the moment when your opponent will be aware where it landed or where it go. So with this, you can always destroy it. The util here, the traps, even when invisible, can be destroyed with fire. Like in case of, actual guns, or with nanoswarms or mollies and so on. And now let's talk about the most complicated piece of utility in her arsenal, which is the Arc Rose. It's a default utility that you get every round for free, and it has a cooldown of 20 seconds each time after you use it. But also, it has a 45-second cooldown if it gets destroyed, because it only takes 1 bullet to destroy it. Now, and this is gonna be a little bit of talking, so bear with me. There are multiple ways of using this flash. One, you left click on a wall and it just sets up like this. It's visible to the opponents, again, till it becomes invisible, just like we have seen right now. You place it on the wall, visible, invisible. So if your opponent saw it, how you set it up, they're gonna know where to shoot it. Now, after it's being placed, you have to press E to activate it again, and then it flashes. It flashes from the center of the flower. So everyone who sees the center of the flower is fully flashed. It doesn't matter if the flower is pointing in a direction, you just need to see the center flower. It can be put even in a position that is like not exactly frontal, like this, and you will still be flashed like this. So there's some freedom of how you place it and still affect the enemies. But that's not only it. You can also put it through a wall like a breach flash. You have to right click to turn it around, and then it's being put on the other side of the wall, just like you would put it from the other side normally. And of course you can instantly flash. Your opponents will see it being placed through the wall because it's visible, but you can try to like activate it as soon as possible, and you'll be able to see how fast can you do it by me just spamming the key to activate it right now. That's how fast will it be. It gives a lot of time for the opponent to actually react it, because they will be seeing that flower all the time before it flashes. But once it starts flashing, destroying it makes no difference. The flash will go through. Now, important things to notice when it comes to using this flash is that you will be able to pop it, and this will not affect your gun. Pay attention. It pops, but your gun is always active, which means that you're able to use this flash for yourself. Like this. We pop it, and we insta swing with the gun ready to shoot. You can also recoil it through walls. And the range for the recoil is 33 meters, so that's essentially how big the radius is of the footstep sounds. Actually, just a little bit more, but you can recoil it through walls. You don't have to get line of sight, and what's very important, without this kind of like interaction, you would not be able to pick it up when you put it through a wall. So like, for example, I put it there, I flash, and now I want to pick it up. If I would have to get line of sight for that, that will make it very hard to use. But once you do that, you have 20 seconds to use it again. Another very important aspect of this flash is the info, because it does give you informations once that someone is flashed. So when I will place it over here, I get an information with the voice line, but I also get the information with the actual sound of the flash because it's different. Listen to it again.
Good hit.
It's very unpleasant to listen to. It sounds like someone just broke millions of plates or something.
Good hit.
But you get information that someone was flashed.
Retrieving flash.
So when you place it when someone doesn't get flashed, it sounds like this. There's one more important aspect in this character when it comes to flashing.
Retrieving flash.
The utility pieces have essentially global range. So if I put the flash on one side, let's say I'm putting it over here, and now I'm gonna go away from its range, it's important to have the voice lines on, because you will have informations on that position with a flash, even though you will not hear the actual pop.
Blinding. Good hit.
See? We don't hear the flash popping.
Flashing. Good hit.
But the voice line gives us info that someone was flashed. Now, I typically like to play without voice lines, but if I'll play Vyse, I will unfortunately have to keep the voice lines on just because of this. The flower becomes visible to someone who is 10 meters away from it. This is 11 meters.
There.
This is 10 meters. Now it becomes also visible with a red tint on it, and it also emits a sound. So the range of the flower is way bigger than the range of the traps. Now let's talk about the ultimate. The ultimate is called Steel Garden, which is kind of like on the nose a little bit, because it's steel, because it's made out of metal, but also it steals the guns, kinda. Nice. You know? The goal of it is to affect players in a range exactly as big as the Killjoy lockdown, and the center is you. And after 3 seconds,
Bring me the arsenal! My ultimate's ready.
opponents will be affected in that range in a way that doesn't allow them to use their rifles. They will be allowed to use their pistols, but they cannot use any of the rifles like Phantoms, Vandals, Judges, Buckies, Operators, Marshals, anything that goes into the primary slot. So you're gonna be able to only use any kind of pistol. You can also use a Headhunter or Jet ult or Neon ult or the Operator from Chamber as the ult and so on. It only affects actual primary rifles and weapons. The duration of that effect is 8 seconds. So you have to understand that when you use that ultimate, you want to push in that interval. So overall, once you pop the ult, it will take 11 seconds to actually completely disappear from the map. 3 seconds for activation. 1, 2, 3. Now the weapons are gone, and you have to go because for 8 seconds the players are not able to use the rifles. So it's going to be very important to communicate with your teammates how exactly does this work. But what is very fun about this ult is that, remember, it has a range, and it doesn't matter which direction you look at, it's always the same range. So what is really fun about this is that you can help people that are coming into hookah from short, for example, and help them to like cancel people that have Judge, an example, in the hookah, while still affecting players that are on site. And because of that, have an easier site taking. Now, what is even better, this ultimate is great on defense and attack, because on attack, you can initiate an actual execute. On defense, you can use that to stop an execute or isolate players already when they're on site and take away the guns from them. But what is also very important, it's a great tool for retaking. This is why this amazing ultimate is so flexible, and the agent in general is very flexible as well. Just remember that you don't want to use it when you're certain that your opponents have only pistols, because that's gonna be a waste. But it's still decent against teams who have semi-buys, because then they cannot use the Stingers, the Buckies, the Marshals, as I said before, and so on. But also, it's a great tool when your own team is on a half buy, because then you can, for example, go for a team with a small buy of Stingers and small armor, use this ult, and go onto a site to kill the players who have pistols, and then get their weapons when they're on a full buy. If you are a player under the ultimate from Vyse, you cannot really outplay it by dropping the gun first or like dropping it when you're under effect, because it doesn't affect the gun, it affects the player. So for 8 seconds, you're not able to shoot your primary gun. Just remember though, that ISO can counter your ult by going into his own ult, because then he's not affected by any kind of effects. So if you ult aside that there's an ISO on, and then he uses the ult on you, then you go into his ult, and you both have rifles. But there are good combos with this ultimate in general that you can try in ranked. With KO ult, you're gonna be able to push aside where people can't use their utilities and also can't use their primary guns, for example. So there's no counterplay like the Neon ult, Jet ult, or Chamber ultimate against your ult. But at the same time, it's a little bit of an overkill most likely. But you want to use this ultimate as a brute force to a site. So when you're gonna ult the site, just make sure to attack into the site in that moment, because that's the perfect spot right now to abuse. It's very similar to a fade ult. There are some people who really argue with me that when you fade ult, you can use it to fake rotations, because you fake attacking B and then you go A. In most cases, that's a waste. You want to go onto the side that is being hit by a fade ult, because the effect is so powerful. And this is very similar case. You don't want to use it as a fake, and I understand it doesn't cover any kind of footsteps and so on, but it's such a powerful ultimate that you want to use that very specific timing on it to go to the side. I have also an ongoing document that I call the Compendium, which has a lot of informations in it. And one of the sheets has like all of the agents combined with all of the roles and all of the details about them. So it's an ongoing document that I add with new agents. Currently, Vyse is under, let's say, work in progress, so this might still change, but currently my opinion is like this. Vyse might be a sentinel, but that doesn't mean that she's like any other sentinel. As you can see, all of the sentinels here have different roles. Chamber is an off-angle trade denial agent. it's not about like surveillance like Killjoy or Cypher. Sage is a styling expert because the only utility she has like kind of slows people down. Deadlock is a side fortifier, and apart from her being absolutely useless. But Vyse is like a combination between the Sage and the Deadlock. She is a stalling expert because the wall and the Razorvines are slowing people down and isolating the players between each other, right? She is being used as an anchor, that's why the side fortifier, but also can be used in post plant to use both the Razorvines and the wall to slow people down and make sure that the post plant is harder for retaking. But she's incredibly flexible because as a secondary role, you can be anything you want. You can be a support with a flash. You can use it for active info gathering. You can be gathering, like denying map control if you do it actively on both attack and defense. So she's very flexible if you don't want to play on site as an anchor. And because of that, this is still under work, but that's my first impression. Proactive info as a tertiary role is very similar to Skye. Like, she will get proactive info with her flashes. And because of that, she has the flexible flashes as a flash type. And the attack order for her is essentially, she is most likely a secondary entry or a support because she can use the lineups for the mollies. I'll call them mollies, but you will know what I say. You can use her as a support with the mollies and the flashes, but she can also just be a secondary entry or even to some degree as a first entry because she can flash for herself. Now, when it comes to, and this everyone gets wrong, so I'm going to explain that again. Here, you have a floor and a ceiling of the complexity. This is different from skill floor and skill ceiling. It's not that, it's complexity. This is a rank for me, which showcases it to you how difficult an agent is to pick up, which is the floor. So you never played the agent and you want to play an agent, and if the number here is high, that means it's kind of hard to play this agent well first time you pick it up. And the ceiling is to use to describe how complicated the agent will be when you put more hours into it. So what is the ceiling of your time sacrifice and how much knowledge you need to get to actually be decent at it? So the more complicated the character is, both of those numbers go higher, but some characters can be incredibly easy to pick up and hard to master. Like Sage is incredibly easy to pick up because it's 2 out of 10 on floor. It's very simple to use that util with some understanding, basic understanding, but she's hard to master because there's so many things you can do with the wall and aggressively play with it. But some characters are gonna be instantly hard to play on both levels, like Yoru. Yoru is incredibly tough to play correctly on the basic level. This is why so many people think that Yoru is a troll agent, but it's gonna be incredibly hard to play at the highest level because there's so many things you need to learn about it. Anyway, back to Vyse. She is also a great anchor, but also long-range support because of the lineups that you can use from side A to side B, for example. But she's definitely not one thing. When you're gonna be playing Vyse, you don't want to be a lurker on this agent. Not only none of her utility is none of her utility helps you avoid going into traps from opponents, but also she's a sentinel, but that doesn't mean she's gonna be a good at lurking. This is why most of the sentinels that you see actually are not the best at lurking. As you can see here, we have a chamber with 5 out of 10 because, you know, he is a kind of like self-efficient and he can still, like, he's not needed to play with the team. Killjoy is 2 out of 10 because her range is so limited and the nanoswarms are fantastic for executes. Cypher is 10 out of 10 because of his global range and his Cypher cages allowing him to dodge traps, but Sage, Deadlock are just not the best at it because, you know, there's not much to do here, and Sage has potential to have synergy with the team, and the only thing that can dodge traps for her is the wall. 400 credits to dodge a trap is not the best. And Vyse is just fantastic for supporting the team, so that's why you don't want to lurk on her, even though she's a sentinel. So make sure to bookmark this this document. It's get updated frequently. You can also learn about defaulting on it, what to pistol buy, default smokes on few maps that I'm still gonna add in the future. Now let's go to actual setups on a map. Important to understand is the detection range for the opponents of your pieces of utility, because that will affect how you build your setups. So the range to see the invisible trap or the invisible wall is 4 meters. So right here you see the distance that is 4 meters from the trap. This is 5 meters right now, so you're not going to be able to see it. But once you move a little bit closer, it becomes 4 meters, and now the wall is visible for you. All of them become reddish in color, but also emit a sound. Now, the flash is different. The flower becomes visible to someone who is 10 meters away from it. This is 11 meters. This is 10 meters. Now it becomes also visible with a red tint on it, and it also emits a sound. So the range of the flower is way bigger than the range of the traps. That does impact the way that we're going to be building defensive setups right now that I'm going to show to you. All right, let's start with some basic idea of a setup on defense on B bind. Now we're gonna try to utilize everything that we have in our disposal apart from the ultimate and showcase why it should work with each other. So the goal is, as an anchor, and the idea on how to play this agent is to isolate, maybe it should be named ISO, no? To isolate the first execute so we can get into a 1v1 gunfight with the first player that comes to site, kill him, and then be ready for the second wave. So because of that, we're gonna do a simple setup like this. The wall in front of the garden, one Razorvine in front of it, second one for hookah, and then we're gonna put a flash that is gonna be behind us because we're gonna be playing either from tube or from backside. Now, the mechanic of placing the rows is exactly like a Cypher camera. So it has a limitation on the range of how far away can you do it, but you can jump up to increase the range. And also if you stand up on a higher spot, you can put it higher. Right? So, for example, we can put it on over here, and that will affect every single player that is in hookah, but also the players in garden, or when they go out of garden. And remember, this is invisible to the moment it flashes if we put it before the enemies are close. So we want to pre-set up some of this stuff just like a Cypher setup or a Killjoy setup, but not always. It really depends on how we want to play the agent. But let's focus now as being an anchor. And why is that wall specifically put out in that position? Because everything here, for me, has a goal in its mind. So the idea is that this position of the wall is motivated by the distance of the detection. So once the opponents know where the wall is, they might try to trigger it before they commit to the site. So if the wall would be, for example, if we just put it over here, then the players could maybe try like jump peeking into it, triggering the wall, waiting out 8 seconds, and then going to site. But the idea is that we are putting a wall that will get active once the opponents commit to the site. And you will find this a common theme in my defensive setups on every single map that I will be showing in my guides. Because that's literally the only reliable way of making sure that your wall will do its job. So imagine this. Opponents are playing attack on bind and they want to go into this site. Jet will try to dash towards elbow or maybe towards side if she goes from long. If she goes from hookah, well, that's a completely different story. Or if someone just walks out. If they walk out and they trigger the wall, that means that the rest of the players who are behind them probably have bad spacing, and that will mean that this player will now be alone. Now, when you're going to be playing in the backside, you have few options. That wall is being activated, right? Because you can play off it. You don't have to peek. You can just wait for that wall to be active or wait till you hear the sound of someone dropping from hookah. So let's assume someone is pushing from garden. They activate the wall. So now I want to activate the Razorvine for hookah to make sure that I'm not being pushed from multiple directions. So I activate this. I swing here. The wall isolates the garden. I probably have a 1v1 gunfight. I don't activate this this Razorvine most likely till I kill that person, because the wall is activated for 8 seconds. When that 8 seconds is gone, then I can activate the Razorvine to make sure that the players that are now want to commit after the one player is dead will have a hard time following through. But on top of that,
Flashing.
I have a flash. So when the wall gets active, maybe I will actually try a different way. And this is why there's so many ways of playing this agent. You can just spam util. So we're gonna do the same setup. The wall gets triggered. I flash. I activate both Razorvines, and I try to isolate the gunfight without showing myself to the players in hookah. Because now I have isolated the player from garden towards site, flashed everyone else, tried to get one kill, go back. Most likely, if that was successful and no one followed because I did my job right, I'm gonna recall this this flash to not get destroyed so I can use it again in 20 seconds. If I leave it up there, I can use it again in 20 seconds, but there's a small chance that some opponents will saw the location of it and will now shoot it after they, you know, maybe dodge the flash or were fully flashed and now they go back. So I want to recall it to not have that situation. So now, once you have an idea what you want to achieve with the defensive setup like I shown on the B side, we can apply the same logic to other sides or other maps in the game. Now I'm going to show you here some walls that I found very useful for A side. I'm going to start with 3 positions that are coming from out of short. First one is going to be over here. Now the goal is the same as I explained on the wall that we had on garden over here. We want this wall to activate once the opponents are going onto site. So when we place it like this wall only gets active when people cross it, right? So they cannot really activate it without literally just like trying to go onto site and exposing themselves, which can already kill them, right? Remember also that the wall, how wide it is, it will actually dictate if someone can squeeze through. So in this case, when this wall gets active, you have a small gap here that you can shoot through, but people are not able to just go forward to its side. So that's one of the walls that I like using here, because that will essentially affect the players coming from short. If they want to follow someone, they won't have to go on the box over here and jump on the wall. You have to be aware of that. But still, your first task is to isolate the one player that goes to lamps, most likely a jet or a raise. But also remember that a raise or a jet who can updraft or like go very high will not trigger the wall, as it can be over it. You have to remember that the players need to trigger this line over here. If they go above it, that wall is not gonna get triggered. Another wall that I like doing is this one here. This one is pretty funny. So you put it in a way that when activated, it also blocks the TP. So when someone goes into lamps, he gets isolated from the rest of the team. The team cannot rotate to B because the wall is blocking the TP for 8 seconds. And now you can use other pieces of utility to try to win this gunfight on a player that is going towards lamps. It's pretty good when you have a judge, for example. Now, another wall that I think is fantastic, and we're probably gonna see it a lot being used in pro play, is right here. This is the wall. The idea behind this is to isolate the player who is going to plant. So this is not gonna work on a Gecko Wingman, because Wingman 1 doesn't trigger the wall and might no one else like even follow it. So this wall will never get triggered. But if they don't have a Gecko and they would like to plant, they will most likely just run over here, try to get this space, that wall gets triggered, and now you have an isolated gunfight against the player who is planting the spike. Now, for showers, we're gonna literally apply the same logic that we applied to garden with the wall over here. We don't want the wall to be in the door frame. Again, because if we do it in the door frame, people will see it very fast. So once I'm standing here, I'm gonna see that the wall is here, and I can now bait activating it. But I mean, it's kind of hard to do, but still, it's like they will know. So they might also like synchronize and just run through fast and ignore the wall after that, right? So the point is of the wall to isolate the player is to put it in a distance that doesn't get spotted. So in this case, I would like to do something like this. The most outwards wall over here. Now, when this gets activated, that means that the players are already out. They are most likely just running through. And the distance for it, as you can see here, is 5 meters. So people will not see this wall, that it's here, when they're standing in showers. So when they run through with the guns in their hands, they're gonna go and activate it, and most likely you get one of them in front of the wall while the others are stuck behind it. Now, this is a great wall if you know that your opponents will like try to go through long B teleport to showers, but otherwise I would probably not use it because typically there's 1, maybe 2 players in showers and most of them are going short. So this is why I would prefer the walls over here. This one, and this one. In ranked, people are cowards. Remember about that. So once they see something on the ground that they know that will deal damage, they will probably not go through, even though the damage is minimal. If someone goes through the entirety of the Razorvine on the biggest point in the diameter, it's only 50 damage. The bigger problem of going through this is actually giving the audio cue and being slowed down, not the damage itself. But people will be afraid of it. Now, one other thing to remember about the Razorvine is, again, you can shoot this and destroy it with 2 bullets. But that's why you want to put it in more distance than 4 meters from the opponents. One more thing that is pretty important when it comes to your setups, and I forgot about to say that earlier, you don't want to put your traps on the line of the wall, because if the wall pops before you activate your Razorvine, the wall will be here, but the trap will get destroyed by the wall. So don't set them on the same position. Now let's talk about potential flashes, how to set them up on A. I have spent quite some time on trying to figure it out what would be the good setup, and there's always a problem with some of the angles that you have on the A side. But before the barrier drops, you're able to set up a flower that is positioned over here. This allows you to play off it on lamps and isolate the angles on the left when the flash pops, right? But you don't want to swing too much because the players from this angle might not get flashed. So that's one angle. Other angle that is gonna be good to use is gonna be behind this box over here, because it allows you to peek into the more open area of short and will not flash your teammates on sight. But the problem is that the angle is too low for most of the players. So what you can also do is jump on this box and put the flash in a spot like this. Now you jump and put it in the highest place. Like this. Now you have a flash that you have behind your back when you try to swing into short and try to check the left angle. But the problem is, if someone is standing here, he will not get affected by this flash. So we can also fix that by a different flash from heaven. We can stand on heaven, use the angled wall, you go forward with the W key, you look down. You reach with your crosser to this point right here, so you don't fall down. You equip the flower, right click, and now you can put it on the other side of the short wall, right here. Now you jump and you put it in a higher spot. Just don't put it in lamps by accident. It's a little bit of practice needed. Oh my god, yeah. As you can see, it's not that easy. Here we go. So now it's on the top of the wall over here, and it can flash the player who's hiding behind the boxes. But the problem of this flash is that it's not good for the right side of the angle. So you want to use this flash when you want to be peeking from this side of the map. So when you flash this, you can go and try to kill the players from this angle over here. There's a lot of places where you can hide your rows from detection and use it in very unpredictable spots. Like you can hide it behind the wheels of the truck, but you have to be aware that if the pixel is covered, it might not flash people. So it's very hard for opponents to destroy this flash, but it might be very hard to actually have an effect of an opponent because the pixel that is being flashed from is not visible to the opponents, like this. So whenever you do setups like that, make sure to test it out, because it's not always obvious who's gonna get flashed and who's not gonna get flashed. Alright guys, this video is already becoming way too long, but I want to show you something that you can, in theory, do on the B side as when you're attacking and you try to get out of space. Let's say you go from long, you can actually use one of your phones, just like a grenade like this, to make sure that you can gather the space on long and no one will be just peeking you left and right out of the garden with you being noticing the sounds that are coming out of it, right? But also, let's say that maybe you saved the phones and now you have some stuff to use on the side. So I prepared 3 lineups, 2 for the phones and 1 lineup for the flash, to have a potential execute towards the B side. So you're gonna stand in this corner over here. It's a little bit complicated, so you need to practice it, but it's worth it. First lineup for the phones is gonna use this small thing. The second lineup is gonna use a flower, or rather a leaf, that you're gonna find over here. This one here. So now you're gonna put your HUD over here like this.
Launching thorns.
This lands on cubby, affects the entire cubby, and not only helps you to go on the side, but also helps the people from hookah, so they are not being peeked by someone from cubby or from tube. The other lineup, you're gonna move your HUD like this. Pay attention to the right lower side of your line that goes underneath this leaf over here.
Rip and tear.
And this lands in the backside of B over here to affect the entire side. So now, when you pop them, it should look something like this.
Thorns are alive.
You affect the players in all of those positions, so they are not, like, let's say, motivated to swing into the positions that they typically would swing. So they are afraid of moving if they're in those positions. You unfortunately cannot do the phones into the tube, because even if it lands like this, it looks like it affects people inside of it, but this doesn't deal any damage. Only the things that are outside, because they somehow go through, but not the people inside of tube. So we're not gonna do that. And then we're gonna do a flash that we go into this corner. We look into this spot. You see this blue mark over here? We look it on the left. We activate the flash. We right click so it goes through the wall. And we put it on the top of this. So now we can flash everyone who is on site, peeking out of cubby over here as well. And we can go out to the side. And it's high enough to affect people who are even standing over here, right? So when you use all of that in unison, it should look like this. So let's do the entire execute now. First one molly, then the second molly, and then the flash.
Launching thorns. Rip and tear.
We go over here. We're gonna activate the mollies now.
Thorns activated.
1, 2, look here, flash, right click, activate, flash, go to side. With the help of your teammates, you should probably have a big of an impact of taking the side, because you carved so much space for the team and you are a sentinel. So you essentially are not meant to do this when you're going onto site. Those are 3 pieces of utility that you have used and probably helped doing an execute by a large margin. So what's my final consensus about this agent? Do I like the agent? Yes, I do. I think it's a great design. It feels like an actual deadlock that is playable in the game. It's very flexible, so you'll be able to showcase your playstyle while playing this agent and still develop further. So this guide is in no means ultimate or anything. I barely scratched the surface of it. Like, I showed you some examples and some mindset of what you want to do with this agent, but in general, this agent, it's very deep. The way you're gonna use it, it's very deep, and it also is player dependent, so you're gonna have an occasion to showcase your own skills in a meaningful way. Now, when it comes to compositions, I feel like this agent can be used as a singular sentinel on some maps like Ascent or maybe Bind on the smaller ones, maybe on Split as well to some degree, because people rotate through flank, through mid typically, so you can put a wall over there. But in general, it's most likely a secondary sentinel because it's also like filling some roles of other agents on attack as a semi-bad initiator, right? So in pro play, there was a composition that was being popularized in tier 2 Valorant VCT circuit that was incorporating on Ascent, for example, a Cypher and a Deadlock. I personally absolutely hated that composition, and I still think it's absolute third level of a composition, but somehow people liked playing it at pro level, and they were, in my opinion, baited into playing something that wasn't really good, and people were trying to just popularize it because of Deadlock. I don't know. And like, it wasn't efficient and people were losing with that comp a lot of times. And when they were winning, that means that the Deadlock was just popping off and had nothing to do with the Deadlock anyway. So in this case with Vyse, I think that Vyse can actually replace the Deadlock in those compositions with a kind of similar idea, but not exactly because it's still vastly different agents. But you will be able to play double Sentinel compositions with a Cypher and Vyse or a Killjoy and Vyse, and I feel like Killjoy has more synergy because using nanoswarms and the traps together is actually pretty deadly because people are now slowed and they take damage if they move away, but if they don't move away, they get wrecked by the nanoswarms, right? So they have a lot of compositional synergies there, and in general, because of that, you can find some success in a more defense-based compositions that will be to some degree still efficient on the attack. Now, do I think that she is overpowered? Because many people think, other content creators I hear, maybe they're just clickbaiting because new agent has to be overpowered. Oh my god, buy your agents now. As people typically react like that. I'm not that kind of person. I try to analyze what we see in front of us, and I think I have been so far spot on every single agent that was developed in the game, apart from the Jet in the alpha, and I realized that she was broken when she got the third smoke. But to be fair, even the devs of the game didn't know that she was broken. They buffed her, right? So that was the moment for me when I learned how the game is properly played. So with that in mind, with my track record in mind, I feel like she is good enough to be playable. She is good enough to be played at a pro level, but I don't think she's oppressive enough to be called overpowered or broken, because her flash, the most important part of her util, in my opinion, is destroyable. And the interval in which you can destroy the flash when it's being placed makes it counterable. And because of that, she's not oppressive on attack, but she's very decent on defense, because the flash is invisible and you don't know where it is, but it still has a bigger detection range than the other pieces of utility, since you can see it from 10 meters away. Which I think the devs actually balanced it pretty okay in this case. Like, it looks like they actually played with this agent a lot, and they realize that the traps in the wall have to get the different detection range than the flash, because the flash could be more oppressive if it had the 4-meter detection range. So kudos to the devs. I think they nailed the design of it. It feels like the entirety of this agent feels really like a labor of love and passion. The ultimate maybe sounds insane when someone would say it, but I think overall the ult is good, but also doesn't get you 3 kills, which is important. It's like, I don't really like ultimates like Ray's Showstopper. It's like, if you know that someone is in a position like that, it's a free kill, and it's like you can't really do anything about it. So I feel like those kind of ults are good design. I feel because of that, some ults have to be redesigned to some sort. Like, for example, the Breach ult has to be changed. I feel like it cannot have a stun effect. It has to be something else than a stun, because this stun is laughable to some degree and people still won't tap you. And it feels bad when you use a 9 Orber and you feel like you didn't get anything out of it, while the Fade gets so much shit done with it. And now Vyse, with an 8 Orber, is able to impact the site more than the Breach with a 9 Orber. So I think there has to be some balancing done there. But Vyse so far is really impressive. I feel like for the longest time, I didn't have an agent that I'm legit excited to try and play in ranked and learn. And I hope you guys also will have similar positive emotions towards the new agent in the game. And if you did watch the video till the end, I salute you. Not many people have an attention span of, I don't know, 34 minutes or something like that, or more, maybe more. I don't even know. I didn't edit it yet. So if you liked it, leave a comment, subscribe, whatever. Help me out, share this with your friends. And you can expect more guides for Vyse because the agent is nuts, and we'll try to do maybe defensive setups for every map. But as you guys know, I'm pretty lazy, so we don't know. All right, bye-bye. See ya.